Welcome back to the channel, everyone. We get to finally talk about another Google Pixel phone, and I feel like I've been on a roll because I've been talking about so many of these phones and just knocking all these slides out. To be honest, I love this progress. And the next phone in line is the Google Pixel 3, and this phone actually isn't even that old to begin with, and this was kind of the first time we saw Google kind of take a different approach with their Pixel line, but at the same time not really, because the Pixel 2 XL kind of changed the way it looked in terms of hardware. But I definitely do think coming from a Pixel 2 to a Pixel 3, there was quite a bit of progress and quite a bit of an update for sure in terms of hardware, and I feel like I'm going to say progress 50 times in this video because I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I just remembered that word. Now the Pixel 3 came out in 2018, so this year it will be turning 2 years old, which for a standard Google phone, or for a standard Android phone for that matter, that would kind of be a long time. But for a Pixel phone, that's about halfway through its life cycle, so that's still a very good phone. It's still getting software updates for at least a couple more years, which is really good. Now the best thing about the Pixel phone would definitely be the software we already know, but I'll get into that in a second. But the front of the Pixel has the 5.5-inch POLED display. It is a 1080p display, but what I can tell you is it's not a bad display at all. And even in 2020, yeah, we're probably moving more towards the 1440p range, and even like the Galaxy S20, the base model, that's probably going to be 1440p. So all those phones I think are probably going to be 1440p that are being released this year. But even this panel being 1080p is not bad at all, and I kind of do like it, I'll be honest. There's some other things not to like about this phone, but that for sure is not one of them. So the front panel is pretty decent. There are a little bit of bezel on the front and the top and bottom, but it's not like groundbreaking. It's not like a crazy thing. On the front, we do have a dual camera setup, which is cool. We have front facing speaker, I believe. It might be speakers, I haven't even tested it, but at least a front facing speaker, which is still cool. But the bezel up at the top and bottom isn't that much, and it's really not that big of a deal. Yeah, they kind of shrunk it down with the Pixel 4, but even then it's not that big of a deal. I do like this bezel, and I don't love this bezel, but I don't hate it. Like, it's not that big of a deal. On the bottom we have a USB Type-C port, which is cool. On the back you can see that single camera setup as well as that fingerprint sensor, which is really awesome. Now this phone does have wireless charging, which is cool, so I guess that little glass at the top kind of supports wireless charging, which is awesome. And really, in terms of the outside, that kind of covers it. You know, when you're holding this phone in the hand and everything, it does feel kind of premium. Yeah, there's more premium phones out in the market right now, but it doesn't feel like the cheapest thing. It just kind of feels like a different type of premium. We're kind of used to seeing like, oh, if the phone has glass in the back and the chassis is really premium, then it'll probably be really premium. But this phone is a little bit different because its highlights are the software and not necessarily the hardware, but it's not that big of a deal. Now there are two different models in terms of storage variants of the Pixel 3. There's a 64 and 128 gigabyte model, and that base model right now on Amazon is selling for about $260, which is pretty cheap for a phone like this that's still getting software support, and that's depreciated quite a bit from its first price tag from 2018, so it went down quite a bit. So if you want to pick it up for that price, the first link down in the description will take you to Amazon for that price. You can help support the channel at the same time if you buy from there. Now with those two different storage models, 64 and 128, that's kind of not a good thing in 2020 because, you know, as you know, this phone doesn't even have a micro SD card slot, and now we have phones that are, you know, 256 or 512. We're probably going to get our first 1 terabyte phones coming out this year, and some of those phones might even still have micro SD card slots, so that's pretty insane that that's the case. I don't think it's like a crazy thing. My phone is 64 gigs, but if you have the ability, you might want to switch up to a phone with higher storage instead of one that has a base model storage of 64 and top tier is 128, but I don't think it's insane. I think you'll get over it in a little bit. Now moving on to the software side of things, this thing was released with Android Pie. It is going to be getting Android Q. It already has Android Q. I already have it on it. And I think my experience on it has been pretty good. I like Android Q a lot. It's very smooth whenever I do anything with it. It was a decent upgrade from Android Pie. It wasn't like a groundbreaking thing. It's more or less the same, but it did increase my, I think, use case of the phone, I would say. I don't use an Android phone as my main phone, but I think I enjoy my experience now, especially with that gestures-based design. That really changes things up. It improves the screen real estate. I get more screen real estate on my phone. And actually a small little thing is the burn-in on the phone decreases quite a bit because we don't have that nav bar on the screen all the time, so you actually end up saving your screen panel in the long run, which is really awesome, and I love seeing that. But what I will tell you is that even if Android 10 isn't the best or whatever, I wouldn't even freak out because this phone on stock software support is lasting for at least like another 2 versions of software. So the Pixel 2, the first Pixel is getting out now, so the next phone in line is the Pixel 2 and 2 XL, and those are getting Android 11, and then those will stop, and the Pixel 3 will get it too, and then Android 12, which the Pixel 3 will get, and the Android and the Google Google Pixel 2 will stop and the Google Pixel 3 will stop too. So hopefully that made any sense. Basically, Android 12 will be the time Pixel 3 will stop. So that's 2 more versions of Android that you're still set on the Google Pixel 3, which is really cool. And I love seeing that type of progress on phones like this. But even if you don't want to keep it stock, there's still tons of support out there for the development community. These phones are very popular in the third-party development community. You can easily go and find ROMs for any use case. You can find ROMs for literally anything you want to. There's going to be Android 13 ROMs, Android 14 ROMs, maybe even 15 ROMs in the future, who knows, but right now we're in the present and this phone is still being supported by Google, so I'd probably keep it stock if I were you. That really pretty much covers it there. Now hitting on the performance, this thing has the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 chipset, an octa-core CPU, and Adreno 630 GPU, and like I said, there are 2 different models in storage, 64 and 128, but both those models have 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, what I can tell you about the performances is that really the RAM is the main issue here. When we have phones that have like 6 to 8 gigabytes of RAM on the base model, having a phone that has 4 gigabytes of RAM on that base model and the only model isn't really a good look for this device, I'll be honest. Apps and games and applications, whatever, all those things are only getting more and more demanding in terms of the size and processing speeds that it takes. So kind of future-proofing yourself, I would recommend at least 6 gigabytes of RAM in this day and age, especially with software updates taking up more sizes and demanding more power and resources. You're kind of not future-proofing yourself if you have a device that has only 4 gigabytes of RAM, and that's my main issue with this device. But on the other flip side, this is on stock Android, so it doesn't really require too many resources. It doesn't have too many background processes. So even now in 2020, I think that can still get you by. What I can tell you though is the performance of this phone is still very good. Really, whatever I was doing with it is very fine. I don't really have too many things that I do with my phone to begin with. I just go on Snapchat, Instagram, I text people and stuff. It's not like I'm doing real work, maybe besides like editing descriptions on YouTube videos, but like other than that, I don't really do anything crazy on my device that I couldn't do on like an iPhone 5 or like on a Nexus 5, for example. So I think at the end of the day, the performance is good for me. Small applications and multitasking is really good, and I do love that gesture-based design now with Android 10, even on the Pixel 3. I like that screen size of 5.5 inch panel. It's not even that big of a phone, so it's like one-handed use most of the time I can get through with it. Even if I step it up to really heavy intensive gaming, it can handle that perfectly fine too. And yes, the Pixel 4 might be a little bit faster, but the performance on this phone is still pretty good. So even now in 2020, I will definitely give it a thumbs up in my book. So if you're kind of in the middle, if you want a phone that's going to last you longer, then you might be better off just getting a Pixel 4 like a Galaxy S9 or S10, but that one has the same amount of RAM too. But the Galaxy S10e might be a better way to go. But the Google Pixel 3 I think still is a very good performing phone for the time being in 2020. So that kind of covers it up there. Now hitting on the camera, this thing has a single 12.2 megapixel camera on the back and a dual camera setup on the front. That's very interesting that they would put a dual camera setup on the front but a single camera on the back, but whatever. And this was in 2018 too, okay. Now that front camera has 2 8 megapixel sensors, 1080p at up to 30 frames, and that extra sensor is an ultra wide sensor, so you can get more people in your front camera photos if you want to do that. Now on that back camera, you can do 4K at 30 frames, no 4K at 60, which is okay. This was 2018. Now in 2020, that should be the bare minimum in my opinion. You can do 1080p at 120 and all those cool little things. And what I can tell you about the quality of the camera is, like we said before, dude, the quality on the Pixel phone cameras are awesome, and I love seeing that. Their software is great, the software processing is awesome, and really at the end of the day, the camera is one of the better cameras still. But on the flip side, it's missing out on those camera hardware features that I talk so much about. The Pixel 4 eventually fixed it, but with the Pixel 3, you're missing out on the telephoto and or ultra-wide sensors and or other lenses. So you're kind of not future-proofing yourself there, and it's all in the name of future-proofing. You want to have a device that you can keep for as long as possible, and even though the camera quality is great, it's kind of missing out on those camera features and the hardware features that other cameras bring. So it's not a deal breaker. If you don't care about those things, then it doesn't matter, but that might be something that might mean something to you. So it's kind of a use case basis. So I'd look into that, but the camera quality is still very great for sure. Now ending it off with the battery life, this thing has a 2,915 milliamp hour battery, and it's not that old, so the battery probably hasn't degraded too much based on your uses, but it might be different based on the person who was using it before you. You're probably going to end up getting it used. And what I can tell you about the battery life, it's more so average than not. It's a decent sized battery for a stock Android phone, so that's good, but it's not like in a crazy amazing battery life that's just going to last you 15 days, and it's not going to be like that. The Pixel 3 XL might do you a little bit better, but this device, I would say it's maybe a little bit above average. It's nothing too insane, but I think it'll definitely get the job done for sure. So I think the battery life department, I think it gets more so of a thumbs up than a thumbs down, or maybe like in the middle, but it's not like crazy or anything. Now to sum up the video and to answer the question, opinion, is the Google Pixel 3 still worth it in 2020? I think yes, this phone is still worth it in 2020. It's still completely worth it. There's really nothing I can say that's wrong with it. Maybe besides the camera hardware feature, maybe the screen is like not 1440p, whatever. But those two things like are kind of subjective, and a lot of people don't really care about it. I think this phone still has a lot going for it. I think it's still very capable, and the best thing is it's still getting software updates for a couple more years, and you can't really go wrong with that. I think that's one of the biggest assets for this phone for sure. So if you're in the market for a Pixel 3, I say go for it. It's one of the best phones still in the used market, at least. It's not one of the best phones at all, but it's one of the best phones in the used market, especially at that $250 price tag that it's selling for. So if you want to pick it up, I'll find the cheapest one on Amazon and link it down in the description below so you guys can get them from there and help support the channel at the same time. But that is pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section as well. Hit that like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it'll mean so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. All those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.